So the other fundamental concept that people need to understand is that learning and memory is highly interdependent on emotional, motivational, physiological functions as well, and vice versa. All these things are integrated and interrelated. One main goal of applied neuroscience is that we should aim to create the set of underlying preconditions that will maximize optimal learning and performance and productivity, whether it be in human activities or any sort of logistical problem when it comes to humans. So for example, one key insight that was discovered was that often including interdisciplinary content in, for example, learning material or healthcare communication, when you include interdisciplinary content, that actually empowers individuals to interconnect ideas in their own mind. And it allows them to learn new complex topics by auto-associating those with simpler topics that they already enjoyed. And in that way, one can actually rewire their brain to kind of gain knowledge more optimally. Part of that also is that there are mnemonics, mind map diagrams and acronyms that people can use for their learning. Note-taking while watching videos or lectures, and also using a lot of multi-sensory audio-video content, three-dimensional interactive content. Also, it's very intellectually immersive, and that helps with learning and reflection processes as well. That is both at the individual level and at the group level as well. There's also implementation of hybrid physical and virtual omni-channel systems, high bandwidth systems. Because of course we are a product of our environment, whether we like it or not. So, and usually people either seek out new environments, or they can change the environment in which they live. So that could be the setting or the people they interact with, that kind of physical workspace or resources or consumables. We can actually also redesign digital interfaces too. So all of this are interesting ideas in developmental neuroscience and kind of applied cognitive science that I've employed quite a lot in my work over the last few years. From that, there are essentially two main processes that one should understand quite profoundly. So firstly, in terms of how we can learn, the first thing is that we learn through kind of gradual classical Pavlovian conditioning. So that's through learning through repetition and conditioning and training, essentially via some sort of positive feedback loop reinforcement learning protocol. This is how we form habits, essentially. Just like any other animal out there, it's a part of habit formation, and we have neural systems for that. In fact, these same neural systems also highly involved, kind of hyper-stimulated, if you wish, in things like addiction as well, whether we look at food or drugs or physiological desires, or even things like the internet media. If we look at how ideas spread and can be almost addictive, it's very interesting to look at that, to look at the epidemiology of cultural transmission of ideas, or memes, or psychiatric contagions. I can talk to you more about that as well. So the first process here is this kind of basic conditioning process. The second one, when it comes to learning and memory, are metacognitive, top-down metacognition strategies. So that is understanding cognition about cognition, or learning about learning. Essentially, one can empower themselves to educate themselves in those. And for example, you can engage in things like introspective neurofeedback, where you introspect on your own state of mind, or you can see your own physiological metrics or psychology from a third person point of view. These become very helpful when trying to optimize all these tips and tactics you've already used, how to kind of take it further. So often with that, there are many cognitive misattributions of physiological processes. So it can be For example, it's basically I'm referring to things like cognitive dissonance of physiological states. So it could be psychogenic physiologic stress responses that you have that you may misattribute to different things. So if someone is if someone is tired about something or happy about something, or looking also things like placebo effects. So that's a whole field of psychoneuroimmunology that's also very interesting. But humans often have these, just like I do, just like anyone else, have a lot of confabulations or kind of incongruous dissonance when it comes to those cognitive processes. These processes may not be perfectly finely tuned. And of course, there's still very super useful and powerful heuristics to leverage to your advantage. And in fact, using those, as the ones I've just explained, you can get to a point where something like learning a new skill or learning to do something originally is much of a burden to do, but actually and requires a lot of energy and cognitive effort. But you can get to a point where it's so internalized into your nervous system that it becomes almost instinctual and automated, and you don't really have to think about it. And it's almost as if you need to spend effort to inhibit that response, right? It just becomes part of your hedonic states of being, and that's a very interesting phenomenon. And I'd like to talk to you more about that later as well. So we understand now the cerebral taxonomy or structures here that would be involved in those sorts of cognitive processes I've just explained. So on top of the cortex and the hippocampus, what I've already explained, there's also the basal ganglia. If we look at the ventral striatum or the dorsal striatum, So we have the back of the brain here and the frontal cortex here, and these internal structures here that are responsible for a lot of the things that I've just mentioned. If we look at the basal ganglia, the kind of diencephalon region as well, there's a lot of interesting tractography, imaging data on this that I'll be showing to you later. We have cerebellar modules that are, again, all of these association kind of subcortical systems are highly interlinked. And of course, they're all linked with all the major neurotransmitter systems as well. So you will have heard already about the things like the dopaminergic system with dopamine. There's of course other neurotransmitter systems that include with molecules like serotonin, glutamate and GABA, adrenaline, also known as epinephrine, acetylcholine and oxytocin and so on. And these have all been studied quite highly in the last 100 years or so. And of course, drugs can be used to hijack these in bad ways. They can be used to treat those in good ways. There are also congenital genetic preconditions, right, that are involved in someone's neurotransmitter cerebral system makeup. And also, again, to emphasize, this is that my main endeavor with applied cognitive neuroscience. I just want to emphasize very strongly that lifestyle choices that people make affect those neurotransmitter systems as well. And that's a quite powerful tool in your arsenal to deploy, on a daily basis in your daily lives, whether you're at work, if you're preparing for an event. And that again is something I'd like to emphasize more and more. So of course there are many methodologies and methodological equipment used to study all these systems, neural systems. We have pharmacology and histology and microscopy and spectroscopy, magnetic resonance, other sort of bioimaging, vascular imaging, electrophysiology, invasive, non-invasive, electroencephalography, things like, also in terms of psychometric studies, there would be human-computer interactive 360 audio, video stimuli, augmented virtual reality, tools for psychocognitive studies. I've had a chance to use, I've got, this is just, I think in one of the, if you check on my website, I've put the links to an actual demonstration of those. that essentially are quite helpful to, I've used those quite a lot, and they can often be used, and they are often used with a lot of brain scanning devices, portable EEG, and other sorts of electroencephalography tools that one can wear. And those can become very helpful when combined with, other physiological metrics that you can measure. Things like eye tracking is something that I've been very interested in. There's a lot of interesting research in that. Devices that you can wear as watch, not this one here, but that also do all sorts of measurements. And a lot of research these days is doing a lot of multimodal, integrative analyses to give a much more comprehensive picture of human activities in general. And that's something of great interest of mine. So I've had a chance to use those in labs in London, in different institutions and organizations, also my personal home-based setup. And I show details of these in other portfolios and videos. So that's that. And of course, computational modeling, I've had a chance to use a lot to kind of bridge the gap from basic biometric bioinformatics to integrating that with a lot of the topographic mapping data and the neuromorphometric data. And that is something of great interest and of great value to anyone who's interested in just exploring the human experience and how we can quantify the human experience in a way that's very meaningful and very insightful. So there are, of course, clinical applications to everything I've just mentioned. For example, via cognitive behavioral therapy, via mobile apps. That's being done quite a lot now. It would also be that would be for neurological or psychiatric, neuropsychiatric pathologies, but also for anyone out there that doesn't necessarily have a specific clinical diagnosis. So that could be on the whole spectrum of kind of developmental learning disorders or emotional mood disorders. Things like anywhere from the spectrum of dementia to kind of mild cognitive impairment to just general kind of cognitive deficits that are not necessarily they don't necessarily have a kind of neurological clinical diagnosis. So anywhere from neurodegeneration, atrophy, to just basic deficits in cognition. Of course, these clinical applications are for pretty much everyone, not someone with a disease, quote unquote, but it's for also general physical and mental health of all people. So these are interventions for everyone in any capacity that can be quite literally very life-changing to many people.